Hi, it's Katrina. You've seen heists go down in movies, but nothing can prepare you for the real deal. Today, I'm going to blow your mind with some of the most insane, most brazen, most Hollywood-worthy artifact heists in history. Operation Sarcophagus. Ashraf Omar Eldarir decided to bring a whole tomb's worth of ancient Egyptian treasures through JFK, packed into 3 large Samsonites like it was laundry day in the Middle Kingdom. He had 600 looted ancient Egyptian artifacts in 3 checked suitcases. You may have already guessed that this did not go well. Ashraf Omar Eldarir wasn't just a man with big suitcases and bigger dreams of wealth. He was a licensed medical doctor in Egypt who, one random day, looked at his stethoscope and thought, "This sucks. What if I got into the business of selling sarcophagus lids instead?" He ditched his practice and launched what would become one of the most ambitious one-man smuggling empires in Egyptian history. From 2011 to 2020, Eldarir ran what prosecutors generously described as a smuggling network. Though in practical terms, it was more of a one-man flea market of the dead. He was offloading gold amulets, Middle Kingdom textiles, and the occasional Roman limestone carving. Most people bring back fridge magnets from vacation. He was going on vacation with dynastic relics to sell. And then came the grand finale, January 22nd, 2020. The location, JFK International Airport. Eldarir arrived from Cairo with 3 suitcases stuffed with 590 ancient artifacts, which prosecutors said were so fresh out of the ground they still smelled like Egyptian dirt. And that's not paraphrasing. They actually said that. Archaeologists dig for decades hoping for that smell. Eldarir unzipped it on a luggage carousel. Let's stop here for a second and talk shop, because it's one thing to get away with smuggling 2 or 3 small items in a carry-on, right? I mean, no sweat. But how crazy do you have to be to smuggle 600 artifacts stuffed into suitcases and then check them? What did Eldarir think they would see on the X-ray machine? It turns out, Eldarir's phone held videos taken by professional Egyptian looters showcasing their burial chambers like they were real estate listings. Assistant U.S. Attorney William Campos likened it to a Kmart, where Eldarir could pick his favorite grave goods like a man ordering sushi on iPad. Customs agents were not amused, nor was Judge Rachel P. Kovner, who noted that Eldarir wasn't just receiving artifacts, he was actively involved in choosing them, marking his selections with an X, like some macabre archaeological bingo card. The total haul of about 600 artifacts was valued at $82,000, though the historical damage was, as usual, priceless. His smuggling wasn't just a crime against customs forms, it was a crime against cultural memory. Some have gone as far as calling Ashraf a traitor to his ancestors. Ashraf even became something of a forgery expert. To cover his tracks, Eldarir did what any self-respecting 21st century smuggler would do. He photoshopped the past. He forged provenance documents and created fake family histories, claiming the relics belonged to his grandfather's private collection. That might have worked if prosecutors hadn't found his digital forgery toolkit. Hard to refute that one. As for the buyers, they claimed to be unwitting customers. Whether they knew their new wall decor had been yanked from a sacred burial, it's hard to say. And without any hard evidence, the buyers can't be held accountable for any malicious intent. For all any of us know, they were totally in the dark about the smuggling. Imagine thinking you scored a great deal on Etsy only to find out you just purchased a cursed amulet fresh from the Valley of the Kings or ripped off the neck of some dead pharaoh. I should also mention that although these particular 600 objects were estimated to be worth 82 grand, that's not a specific number. In total, between 2011 and 2019, Eldarir smuggled and sold around 600 artifacts, raking in over $600,000. Some of the more notable sales included a woman's sarcophagus lid for $3,750, a bearded funerary mask for $1,500, another mask for $800, a polychrome relief with a snake motif for $4,000, and 2 Roman-era limestone artifacts for $1,000 and $1,200. All in all, Buddy made nearly $1 million in 7 years. Despite the scale of his operation, the court handed Eldarir a relatively light sentence. Can you guess how long? A few years at least, right? Nope, just 6 months in federal prison. The government of Egypt had already seized his assets, which may explain why no fine was imposed. Judge Kavner acknowledged the seriousness of the crime, but seemed to weigh his remorse and personal losses. Ashraf's mother died shortly after his arrest, something he tearfully referenced during sentencing. "I ask her soul for forgiveness," he told the court, which may be the first time in recorded history that a smuggler appealed to both the legal system and the spirit world in the same breath. And in the end, his pleas of mercy worked. 6 months in jail and all of his assets are gone, so when he gets out, he's gonna be broke. But he is a doctor, so hopefully he'll land on his feet, I guess. The big question is whether or not he'll go back to his old ways of smuggling. You know what they say, once a smuggler of Egyptian antiquities, always a smuggler of Egyptian antiquities. Who stole the French crown jewels? All right, it took 8 minutes. 8 minutes for thieves dressed as maintenance workers to walk into the Louvre, smash display cases, and vanish with some of France's most priceless jewels. Feel free to leave an update in the comments. 8 minutes to gut a nation's cultural soul in broad daylight. The security guards, although present, were bamboozled. The cameras were rolling, yet saw nothing, really. And Parisian law enforcement are now scrambling to recover what may already be lost forever. Tough luck, France. You messed up. And by the way, people are getting really confused about the term crown jewels. It doesn't mean an actual crown. All it means is that these are the crown jewels of France, symbols of the French state and the country's history. And that does include crowns, but also any large historical pieces with gemstones worn by royalty. 8 items were stolen: 2 diadems, one fitted with sapphires, a necklace and earrings that belonged to 19th century French queens, an emerald necklace that belonged to Napoleon Bonaparte's second wife, and 2 brooches, one of which belonged to Empress Eugenie, Napoleon III's wife. The jewels alone are worth $102 million, but that doesn't include their historical value. And just so you know, the jewels were not insured. A lot of people were saying the museum can just claim the insurance money, but under French law, museum pieces are only insured when they are getting moved or are loaned out. Otherwise, the insurance premiums would be way too high. The museum will not be compensated for the loss and will just have to take the hit, meaning the people take the hit. And even if the museum were given the insurance money, so what? The artifact is still gone. You might think that such priceless items would end up on the black market, but that's probably not what's happening. Dutch art detective Arthur Brand, who has recovered everything from Nazi-looted works to stolen Picasso, says it may be too late. The jewels, he fears, are already long gone. Those beautiful necklaces are probably on some makeshift jeweler's bench being pried apart. Real-world heists are not like what you've seen in Bond films. Stolen tiaras don't sit in villain lairs under glass, usually. Jewelry historian Carol Bolton and diamond expert Tobias Cormind agree with Arthur Brand that the pieces are likely being dismantled as we speak. The gold and silver will be melted. The gems will be cut down into anonymous fragments. It's not looking good for the rare crown jewels of France. But Brand said there is a small possibility they are being sold in countries like India, Israel, or Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Okay, but how did they pull it off? Not even Guy Ritchie could have planned this thing. It was a military-grade robbery. The gang wore fluorescent construction vests to blend in. They just used a ladder crane to get onto the second-floor balcony and smashed and grabbed with precision. I mean, the jewels were right there by a window. They grabbed what they wanted and escaped on scooters through the narrow arteries of Paris like it was Mario Kart Grand Theft Louvre. Interestingly enough, they left behind the Regent diamond, a large 140.6 carat stone worth an estimated $60 million. It may be because it's too famous to sell on the black market, or it might be because of the curse that goes with the stone. According to prosecutors, the suspects are likely tied to organized crime. These are most likely men with prior records, forensic footprints, and confidence built from many heists before this one. I mean, kind of impressive, not gonna lie. Jokes on the internet may have stolen the show, like, has anyone checked the British Museum? Or raccoons did? Or the fact that thieves waited until 9:30 a.m. because they have great work-life balance. Look, you don't start your criminal business by ripping off the most famous museum on the planet. You start by robbing a subway and then work your way up. The Louvre is the final boss of heists. I mean, you'd at least think so, right? Which means these were not amateurs. A specialized French police unit has been assigned to the case, the kind with a track record of nabbing high-profile art thieves. But the clock is ticking. DNA from a discarded vest might help, but even that's a long shot in the black market world of broken gems and belted gold. It's as if someone had stolen the Mona Lisa, said Alexandre Leger of Maison Vivere, which they did, by the way. The Mona Lisa was stolen in 1911 and was missing for 2 years. Not because of the monetary loss, but because these artifacts were part of the cultural heritage of France. You'll recall that France had a revolution, so there aren't many crown jewels left. They were extremely rare and full of history, and now they're gone. What do you think will happen? Do you have any hope for the jewels being found? The Gold-Helmet Heist. The last time you went to a museum, you bought your ticket and went through the front door like a normal person, right? That's how most people visit museums. Others, like a certain group of thieves, blew the door off its hinges at 3 o'clock a.m. and walk out with 2,500 years of national identity stuffed into a gym bag. One approach gets you a guided tour, and the other gets you Interpol, but only if you get caught. In the sleepy Dutch city of Assen, the night of January 25th, 2025 began like any other. It was still, silent, and cold. But at the Drents Museum, an institution known more for peat bog mummies and Van Gogh's weed burners than for international intrigue, something blew a hole through that piece. Security footage later revealed 3 figures emerging from the darkness like art-thieving wraiths, faces obscured, duffel bag in hand, crowbar in tow, flashlights flickering across the facade. A bright white flash turned night to noon. Sparks, smoke, and the unmistakable violence of a detonation followed. This was not a quiet break-in. It was a full-blown Mission Impossible-style assault. The door was obliterated. The museum's silence was shattered. And in that silence, the thieves went straight for their prize. They didn't want cash, diamonds, or a Van Gogh. These thieves were after something older, stranger, and heavier. They were hunting the treasures of Dacia, and they got them too. By morning, the damage was done, and 4 priceless artifacts were gone. All were on temporary loan from Romania as part of the Dacia Empire of Gold and Silver exhibition. It was a showcase of ancient jewelry and regalia tracing the legacy of a warrior people once feared by Rome. Among the stolen items were 3 massive spiral-shaped golden bracelets, but the crown jewel was literally the crown jewel of the Dacian people, an artifact known as the Helmet of Coțofenești. It sounds like a legendary item you'd find in Baldur's Gate, but it's really a 5th century BC masterpiece made of solid gold and national mythology. The helmet wasn't just any artifact, not by a long shot. It was the symbol of Romania's ancient identity. It was like stealing the Sphinx. Imagine if someone stole the Liberty Bell or picked up the Statue of Liberty and wandered off. That's the importance of this item, which, by the way, was found randomly by a couple of kids. The helmet of Coțofenești was discovered in the 1920s after a rainstorm revealed it buried in the soil of Prahova, Romania. The helmet was then found by some local children who thought they had found the best prop ever. After a short stint pretending the ancient relic was the world's fanciest battle hat and having pretend sword fights, the kids took it home. There, the family used it, no exaggeration, as a trough for livestock. The helmet that presumably once crowned a Dacian king spent the early 20th century as a water dish for goats. Talk about a fall from grace. Eventually, a merchant from Ploiești acquired the dish, the royal crown, and passed it on to the National Museum of Antiquities. It settled into permanent residence at the National History Museum of Romania in Bucharest, where it became as close to a national relic as Vlad the Impaler's tooth. This is Romania, after all. The helmet is obviously not a dish for goats. It boasts 3 solid gold plates, hammered and welded into a gleaming headpiece covered in mythological symbols. The helmet is etched with images of griffins, sphinxes, and one solemn figure sacrificing a ram. Meanwhile, the front bears 2 golden eyes believed to have apotropaic powers. And that's a word I had to look up. It means the helmet could theoretically ward off evil. So, if you wore it while wandering around a medieval village, you'd ward off the evil eye and maybe even the plague. Unfortunately, the helmet couldn't ward off thieves with explosives. After the heist, Romanians were devastated. It was the theft of their heritage. As Claudia Marcu, Romanian art historian and journalist, put it, this is more than just a theft. It is a wound to the Romanian community. The stolen bracelets were no less symbolic. The 3 pieces of ancient jewelry were found in the ruined capital of the Dacian kingdom, which is nestled in the Carpathian Mountains like an ancient fortress of gold. And get this, the exhibition had been scheduled to close the very next day. The thieves knew exactly what to take and when to take it. This wasn't a few archaeology enthusiasts who cooked up a heist in their mom's basement. These were professionals. Dutch police responded quickly. They called an Interpol as this was no local crime. It had all the hallmarks of a transnational operation. A blown door, a burned-out car found nearby, and likely a second getaway vehicle prepped in advance. There were whispers of an art theft syndicate, but these were unsubstantiated rumors. "We must find these items before they're melted down," warned Andrea Oprea, Romania's honorary consul in the Netherlands. And Andrea is right. This is a nightmare situation. These artifacts are irreplaceable, and they could be melted down into raw gold to avoid them ever being found. Once melted, they're gone. What was once a royal Dacian crown becomes raw gold. History becomes bullion, and culture becomes currency. And the race is on. As of now, the objects remain missing. Investigators are scrambling, Interpol is coordinating, and 2 countries are holding their breath. It's almost been a year, and honestly, the clock has sort of run out. It's that whole first 48 hours thing. Only we're already sitting at 10 months. There's a good chance the helmet has been sold on the black market and is currently decorating a very wealthy individual's home. Who do you think would buy such a rare stolen helmet from such an ancient culture? Let me know who your suspects are in the comments. The Great Celtic Gold Heist. First, they cut off the phones. Then they turned off the internet, and then they walked into a high-security museum, cracked a showcase, and vanished with nearly 9 pounds of ancient gold. It was the heist of heists, though it ended in disaster. The staff at the Celtic and Roman Museum in Manching, Germany were expecting just another Tuesday of quiet halls, curious tourists, and maybe a school group misbehaving in the Iron Age wing. Instead, they arrived to find anarchy. The museum's prized exhibit, showcasing 483 Celtic coins, shimmering relics from around 100 BC, were gone without a trace. Just like what happened in Romania and the Louvre, this was a professional job. Surgical, you might say. Police soon realized that before the heist, someone had cut underground fiber optic cables, severing 1,300 connections in the town. These cut connections included not just the alarms at the museum, but the phones and the internet. So even if someone saw the heist, they couldn't call it into the cops. These robbers unplugged practically the entire town. But that's just how these high-stakes robbers roll. You don't get away with a treasure like this without a good scheme. The Manching gold hoard was the ultimate prize, too. Unearthed in 1999, the hoard had been buried under the foundations of a building at what was once one of Central Europe's largest Celtic towns. The town, its name now lost to history, had minting facilities and planned streets, which is very impressive for, 200 BC. In fact, this little town was one of the places that proved the Celts weren't the barbarians the media portrays them as. The Celts were just as clever, advanced, and sophisticated as their Roman enemies. The coins themselves are bowl-shaped, delicately stamped, and were probably forged in that nameless town. According to Dr. Rupert Gavard, head of the Bavarian State Archaeological Collection, the hoard may have been the personal treasury of a tribal leader. Think Ragnar Lothbrok's personal war chest, only this was the Celts. So it's more like the Celtic Federal Reserve, buried under the chieftain's hut and forgotten about. These coins were physical echoes of ancient trade, power, and pre-Roman diplomacy. They were remnants of a time when Rome was not the only dog in the kennel, and the Celts threatened them on nearly every front. Losing the coins wasn't just about losing some money, it was about erasing a link in the story of Europe's history. Germany demanded retribution and a return of their priceless artifacts. And oh boy, would this heist have a dramatic ending. Despite its small size, the Manching Museum wasn't careless or without security. Officials described it as a high-security location. But as anyone who has ever seen Ocean's 11 knows, no security system is foolproof, especially when there's no guard on duty and the alarm lines are down. How could this place have been considered high security? Turns out, cutting costs doesn't always cut costs. Not having a security guard present lost the museum their precious gold. Though in a sort of funny twist, when the telecom lines dropped out, police actually dispatched patrol cars, but not to the museum. They sent the cars to local banks, thinking this was the setup for a conventional heist. By the time anyone realized the museum was the real target, the gold was long gone. Adding insult to injury, this wasn't Germany's first brush with a museum calamity. In 2017, robbers rolled a 221-pound gold coin out of Berlin's Bode Museum in a wheelbarrow. Yes, a wheelbarrow. The coin, known as the Big Maple Leaf, was the second largest gold coin in the world. And guess what? It hasn't been seen since. It may have been melted down, or maybe it was turned into the world's heaviest bracelet. What would you do with a solid gold coin that weighs as much as a very muscly human? Then, in 2019, thieves raided the Green Vault in Dresden's Royal Palace, making off with 21 pieces of jewelry, including a 49-carat white diamond and a sword with a diamond hilt. That heist involved sawing through iron bars and escaping in an Audi. Again, it was definitely professionals who pulled it off. And again, there was no guard inside to stop it. It seems like Germany has a museum heist problem that could be solved by literally just paying someone to guard the place. I'm not an expert, but it really feels like all of these heists would have been thwarted by one guy with a flashlight. Unless it was an inside job. The biggest fear was that the coins would be melted into raw gold and sold on the open market. The actual scrap value of the gold is around 250,000 euros. That's a heartbreakingly low price to pay for the total destruction of a priceless archaeological treasure. Then again, if you're the kind of person who values money more than history, it's a massive payday. And when you're struggling to pay the bills, does history really trump cold, hard cash? Kind of like if you're starving, would you take a buck or a loaf of bread? How long do you suppose a person who robs a museum goes to jail? Luckily, you don't have to guess because I have the answer. 3 men were convicted in 2022 of the brazen theft of the 483 Celtic coins. One of them was sentenced to 11 years in prison. That is actual punishment. That is a hefty jail sentence, not just a slap on the wrist. But how did they get caught? Looks like the robbers were a little greedy. 4 defendants were accused of 20 different robberies and attempted robberies, mostly in Germany, but some in Austria. The crew got together in 2014 and went on a spree. They robbed the museum, but also safes, cash machines, and anything else they could find. Since Europe has much stricter privacy laws than the US, I can't give you their names. Even after a 6-month trial, the finer details of the crimes and the suspects are secret. All I know is that one guy was acquitted and the other 3 were given sentences of up to 11 years. If you know more, please let us all know in the comments below. Oh, and the gold is basically gone, likely sold into private collections around the globe. If you happen upon a random Celtic gold piece at a pawn shop, it just might be from this gold hoard. Paraguay's $200 million museum heist. Let's take a break from Europe and put on our Panama hats and head down to Paraguay, where a group of thieves broke the laws of geology to get away with 200 million bones worth of loot. No cameras, no alarms, just 5 missing masterpieces, a tunnel beneath a health food store, and a museum director with a very bad Tuesday. Let me just say for the record that when your museum doesn't have cameras, it's probably going to get robbed. On a July morning in 2002, staff at the National Museum of Fine Arts of Asunción walked into what looked like a perfectly ordinary gallery. Nothing was broken, there wasn't any graffiti, no alarms had been tripped. There was just an eerie silence and 5 blank spots on the wall where priceless paintings should have been, as if they'd gotten bored and walked off overnight. Since there were no cameras, there was no footage. And since there was no guard, there were no witnesses. There wasn't even a single sign of forced entry. So how do you steal $200 million in fine art without tripping a single sensor? The answer lies 80 feet underground. Authorities searching the area for clues noticed something strange about the health food store across the street. No, it wasn't the kombucha. It was the tunnel. Beneath the quinoa and soy milk sat a fully excavated subterranean passage connecting the store's floor to the museum's basement like it was a subway line for art thieves. Those thieves had been living out a full-time art heist fantasy for months. Cops found fake identities, fake business licenses. The health food store was a front. It was a store that the thieves established specifically to dig a tunnel into the museum. They didn't even care about kale. Actually, there were two tunnels. The second tunnel led to a nearby hotel parking lot, which is undoubtedly where their getaway vehicle awaited, serving as their launchpad into obscurity. Eat kale, steal art, escape through the underground. Paraguay had just hosted the quietest major robbery in Latin American history. I've been telling you all about how it was pulled off, but you don't even know what they stole. The haul was every art enthusiast's wish list. A self-portrait by Tintoretto, the Venetian master who once painted faster than most people read. Tête de Femme by Adolphe Piot, all smoky glances and oil-on-canvas elegance. A landscape by Gustave Courbet, who revolutionized realism. A Madonna and Child by the Spanish Baroque master Bartolomé Esteban Murillo, and perhaps most impressive of all, an unattributed 16th century portrait of Saint Jerome, valued at $200,000. Like everything else in today's video, these were more than objects. They were culturally important items from around the world, and just like that, they were gone. Let's talk about the museum for a second. The National Museum of Fine Arts was founded in 1909, more than half a century after Paraguay claimed independence from Spain. It shares space with the National Archives and holds over 650 artworks, many of them part of the collection once owned by Juan Silvano Godoy. He was Paraguay's first Director General of Culture. The idea, back in 1909, was to place art and culture at the center of a new Paraguayan identity. But a century of political whiplash, economic instability, and brutal violence left the institution underfunded, undermanned, and undersecured. Paraguay is a beautiful place, and its people are too, but they aren't exactly the wealthiest nation. By the time of the heist, the museum still hadn't installed security cameras. I know it was a while ago, 2002, but still, not having cameras even in 2002 resulted in a massive loss. I guess that's why they say hindsight is 2020. Finding these thieves is probably never going to happen. The trail went cold by the end of the next day, even with Interpol involved. Art crime databases were updated, rumors bubbled across South America's black market, but for 6 years, not a single piece of the heist resurfaced. Not one painting, not one fingerprint, not one criminal. Then, in 2008 came a whisper. San Jeronimo, the anonymous Saint Jerome painting worth $200K, had appeared in Posadas, Argentina. Interpol, with help from the Argentinian government, launched a sting operation and found the painting in mint condition. It was arguably the most important of all the stolen pieces and was found miraculously preserved like it had been waiting patiently to be rescued. By July of that year, the painting was back in Paraguay. As the years continued to pass and the other paintings remained missing, the museum faced a strange dilemma. How do you exhibit something you no longer possess? In February 2023, with all hope of finding the other paintings gone, they chose resurrection through replication. In other words, they would repaint what was stolen. 5 contemporary Paraguayan painters were invited to recreate the stolen masterpieces with a twist. They would paint them in public, in full view of anyone who wanted to watch. Now that's pretty cool, right? More than 700 visitors watched the rebirths unfold in real time, stroke by stroke. By March 22nd, the finished replicas were on display in a new exhibit. It felt equal parts homage and artistic defiance. They may not be the originals, but heck, they're just as good. The moral of the story is that if you ever spot a health food store next to a museum and the guys working the counter are covered in dust, maybe call the cops. They might be digging a hole. The Pharaoh's Bracelet. For today's next trick, the thief required no rope harnesses, no glass cutting tools, no thermal drills, and no laser grids. Our next thief was a trusted museum conservator who used a distraction to slink away with a piece of jewelry that belonged to a pharaoh. I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't steal from a pharaoh. I mean, I wouldn't steal, period, but I definitely wouldn't be taking a treasure from a pharaoh. That seems like bad luck just waiting to happen. On September 9th, 2025, a 3,000-year-old solid gold bracelet once worn by Pharaoh Amenemope vanished from the conservation lab of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. It didn't disappear under the cover of night. There were no getaway vans screeching down dusty alleys. This was an inside job, and it happened in broad daylight. The thief was a female conservator who worked at the museum. She was someone who had direct access to the lab's safes and a clear understanding of the museum's blind spots. And what a blind spot! The room holding the priceless gold bracelet didn't have any cameras. The whole room was the blind spot. The technique she used was described by officials as a distraction, but they didn't give any specific details. So whether she fake fainted or yelled, "Look, it's Osiris," I can't say. But whatever she did, it worked. The bracelet was smuggled out, handed off to contacts in Cairo's gold markets, and sold for the equivalent of $4,000 US. That's roughly what a decent set of outdoor furniture costs these days, or if you're from Cairo, a year's salary. Amazingly, investigators were able to trace the bracelet's entire journey, which took it through 3 hands in Cairo's underground economy. First, it went to a silver shop owner in the El Sayeda Zainab district, then to a gold workshop boss in the historic Al-Saga neighborhood, and finally to a gold smelter who did the unthinkable. He melted it. Just like that, a priceless artifact crafted over 3 millennia ago for the ruler of ancient Egypt, adorned with lapis lazuli and linked to a royal tomb, was vaporized for scrap. The pharaoh must be rolling in his mummy wrappings right now. Speaking of the pharaoh, let me give you a bit of background. Pharaoh Amenemope ruled from 1001 to 992 BC during the Third Intermediate Period. This was a chaotic stretch of Egyptian history where local kings fell into the habit of recycling old monuments. Rather than build new ones, pharaohs would just alter existing monuments to better reflect their own kingship. So imagine there's a statue of Pharaoh Bob. You could build a new one of yourself next to it, or for a fraction of the cost, you could change Bob's face to look like your face. And voila, your very own statue on a budget. This was what the Third Intermediate Period was all about. It's kind of ironic that the pharaohs who so readily erased history are now having their history melted into liquid gold. Amenemope's tomb was part of an extraordinary find made by French archaeologist Pierre Montet in the late 1930s. While the world spiraled toward war, Montet uncovered 4 nearly intact royal burials. It was a discovery on par with Howard Carter's excavation of King Tut's tomb. But timing is everything. Hitler's tanks rolling into Poland overshadowed Amenemope's treasures. Had the war waited just another year, even 6 months, he might have been more famous today than King Tut. Timing really is everything. The bracelet came from the cache of items found in the pharaoh's tomb. It wasn't the flashiest piece, but it was authentic, rare, and deeply symbolic. Today, Amenemope's gilt funerary mask, gold offering bowls, and coffins still dazzle visitors in the museum. But his bracelet is now smoke and slag, a loss that no exhibit label can replace. And it isn't the first time Egypt's treasures have vanished into the flames. Remember the 12th century BC? Come on, it was right after Pharaoh Ramses III bankrupted the treasury by fighting off the Sea Peoples with an army of mercenaries. If your memory is still a little fuzzy, I'll give you a recap. Egypt went broke and the workers of Deir el-Medina, who carved and painted the Valley of the Kings, went on strike. It's the first labor protest ever recorded. Shortly after the strike started, presumably after their demands weren't met, those same tomb builders started looting royal graves. Oh, you don't want to pay us for our work? No problem. We'll just rob your graves and get rich. Who better to rob a tomb than the guy who built it? The point I want to make is that Egyptian tombs have had a rough time. People just keep looting them. Even when the treasure has already been looted, cataloged, and put on display, it's still being stolen. And this is happening in one of the oldest archaeological museums in the world, the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square, built in 1902. But it's in the midst of being replaced, so hopefully security will be a little tighter. As of September 2025, Egypt is still preparing to fully open their Grand Egyptian Museum near Giza. It's the Fort Knox of museums, a $1 billion mega museum that now houses Tutankhamun's golden mask and a lot of other treasures. I mean lots, loads, oodles. You don't build $1 billion museum and not fill it with all the treasure under the sun. The sad part is that the older Tahrir Museum has been gradually transferring its collection. It's going to be extinct soon, but that's just the way of the world. The old is replaced by the new. The gold bracelet is melted into liquid gold. The thieves who made money are caught and arrested. Oh yes, my friends, the thieves were caught. 3 suspects have been arrested and presumably strung up by their toes. I can't reveal their names because I don't know them, but you can rest easy knowing they won't be stealing any more bracelets. Egypt takes this stuff very seriously. But it doesn't change the fact the bracelet is gone. You can't unmelt history. Thanks for watching. Which of these heists do you want made into a movie? And who would you cast? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you soon. Bye!